Good to see everyone. Today, I want to be diving into the topic of how to start building with Claude Code, right? So I've talked extensively already around how all of you get to start to level up and start to become AI operators, right? I want to actually start diving into the more technical side of things now, right? To actually show you how to become an AI operator, give you the skill sets, give you the tools, the resources. Like, let's start actually leveling up now, and not just talking about it. Um, so today it's going to be all about Claude Code, right? Just quick show of hands, or just drop in the chat here. How many of you have started with Claude Code already? Not Cowork. I'm actually talking about Claude Code here. So Michael's hand goes up. Michael's hand.
I don't use Claude Code, but I use Codex.
Codex. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Equivalent. Codex works. Kendra says yes. Amazing. If you haven't, just drop a no. I just want to see where everyone is at, so I know how to pace myself today, and where to spend a little bit more time in. All right. So Arnold says yes. Lamia says yes. Everyone else, is that a no? Stephanie says no. It says not yet. Regan says no. Okay, cool. Not yet. Not yet. Nat says just starting. Okay. Not yet. Not working coding or AI-based coding. Okay, cool. No, all good. It's okay if you're not there. That's what today is going to be about, how to get started, and just sharing with you guys some of the, one, how to get started, and two, some of the best practices. And we're going to actually build today too, so you guys can see, right? If you're not already convinced that you need to be learning to use Claude Code, hopefully today will show you, right? I want to take a step back and start with why, right? Part of the AI operator's role is going to be buildings, tools, building solutions, building automations, building actual things, actual uh, solutions to get to specific outcomes, right? The most important thing here is the word outcomes, right? There's lots of AI tools out there. There's lots of uh, um, things you can do with AI, lots of cool things you can do with AI. What's most important for an AI operator is to um, cut out all the noise and focus on what actually gets outcomes, right? 'Cause ultimately, at the end of the day, that is your job. Whether you're an EA, whether you're upgraded to an AI operator, whether you're a combination hybrid of either or, right? The most important thing is outcomes, right? What keeps you as a great EA is you're achieving outcomes for your executives. That doesn't change. When you become an AI operator, it doesn't mean you just tinker with AI or you know how to use AI, or you're on top of the next coolest thing that's out there, right? Whether it's OpenClaw, Hermes, Paperclip, or whatever. There's all these new things that's constantly coming out, right? Sure, one part of it, as I mentioned in the previous session, is to stay on top of things, right? But it's not just for the sake of staying on top of things and being up to date, right? And knowing what the latest cool thing is, right? The most important part is, can you take the things that you know now, the things you're tinkering with, the things you're playing with, the things you're exploring, experimenting with, can you actually get to outcomes with it, right? Because if you can't get to outcomes, there's no point, right? We're hired to achieve outcomes. That's the point why anyone hires anyone or anything, right? If you're hired by your executive, by your client, you're hired to achieve outcomes. So the question is, what outcomes do I need to achieve here? Right. If, as a company, we are hired by our clients to help them achieve outcomes. So all of it comes back to the key word here, which is outcomes. Achieve actual outcomes, right? That's in the most amount of support for your executives, for your clients. Right. And so you might be wondering, what type of outcomes matter, right? Because not all outcomes matter, right? Some outcomes are valuable to your executive, some outcomes aren't, right? If your client doesn't need any marketing things and you're creating marketing things and marketing outcomes, that's not really valuable to them, right? But if they do need marketing things, but you're building operational things or financial things, then that's not helpful to them either, right? And so, one, you need to be able to create outcomes. Two, you need to understand what outcomes actually are valuable and helpful to your clients, to your executive. right? And no one is better suited to know what those outcomes are than you guys, because you guys are the EAs. You work with them day in, day out, right? You understand what what they're focusing on, what they're working on, what their goals are, right? What their priorities are, where the business is at, what they need to be focusing on the business. You guys have the context to understand what outcomes would be valuable to them. Once you understand what those outcomes are, then you get to look at, okay, well, how do I upskill myself to build the skills needed to achieve those outcomes for my clients, for my executives, right? Um, and so coming back to why Claude Code, because Claude Code or Codex, whatever coding tool you use, allows you, or it gives you the environment, the skills. It gives you the ability to actually build, right, solutions to solve problems or to achieve those outcomes that you know is going to be valuable. All right, and so there's a couple buckets I tend to think of when a client comes to me and they're looking for outcomes. Right, there's a couple buckets that I know is going to be most valuable to them. One is outcomes that helps them drive more revenue. Two is outcomes that helps them drive more profit, right? So helping them cut down their expenses, helping them increase their profit margin, right? First one is self-explanatory, so I didn't have to explain that, right? So if you help them create a solution or an outcome that drives more revenue for the business, that's going to be valuable to them, right? Second one is increase their profit margin, right? An example of this is if you know there's a certain tool that or software or subscription your executive is paying for right now, and you're like, you know what, actually, I think I can build a tool or a solution that does that and costs a fraction of it, then you save your executive on that expense, right? And so when you cut out that expense, and that expense gets reallocated towards profit margin now. All right, so that's one way to tie back the things you're working on, the things you get to create, to outcomes that's valuable to your executive. If you just tell them, hey, I want to build this cool tool for you, it might be useful, or they might be thinking, oh, okay, well, that seems like it's kind of a waste of your time. Right? But if you're able to link that and tie that back to, hey, there's this software that you're using right now. If you're spending, I don't know, $100 a month on it right now, right? That's a little over 1,000 a year on it, right? If you're spending, if it's one where you have multiple seats and you have a big team, all right, then that can range from 1,000 to 10,000 a year, even more, right? And you're like, hey, I actually think I can build a tool or a solution or an automation that achieves the outcome we're trying to achieve here, and it just cut out that expense. Then that money gets reallocated back into the business for your executive, right? That, when you tie that languaging and that framing there, then they go, oh, okay, yeah, what do you need? Go and build it. What do you need? You need more training, you need more, you need more tools, more resources, you need better subscriptions or something. What do you need so you can do that? Because that's ultimately something that's valuable to them, right? So first one drives more revenue. Second one increases margins or cuts down their expenses, right? Third one gives them back their time, right? Gives them back their time. That's what you guys do as EAs, is you help them get back their time. Why? So they can reallocate their time back into these two things, is what they should be doing. I hope that's what your executives are doing, right? If you're getting them back their time, they should be refocusing their time on things that's actually going to drive the revenue or increase their profit, right? Because if they're business owners, that's what's typically top of mind for them. How can I scale up the company? How can I increase revenue? And how can I increase profit margins? Okay. So that's the high level of why, I want to make sure that all of you guys are learning how to build solutions. All right. And I say solutions because sometimes that can be an automation. Sometimes that can be an agent. Sometimes that can be a micro app. All right. I don't expect that you guys need to be able to build on like full on enterprise grade softwares. All right. Let's leave that to devs and engineers. All right. But with the tools you guys have now and a little bit of learning and upskilling, you guys are going to be able to build micro apps and micro automations that achieves outcomes. I was hoping someone was going to fill in the blank for me. All right. Cool. So let's dive in. Today's going to be a little bit more on the technical side. If you are new to Claude Code, right? Or Codex. This works for Codex as well, right? But I'm going to use Claude Code as the example for today. This is how you can get started. I'm going to pull up my screen here. By the way, guys, I am going to be building a full-on course that goes much, much deeper into all of this, right? And you guys as EAs here will have access to that. That way you guys can go through the course and start to learn and start to, upskill and start to build, right? So we're going to be, you'll hear more news about this, but we're actually going to migrate all of you, and we're into a new community platform. We're actually going to be starting to invest more time, more energy, and being more intentional with building a community and building more AI training for all of you, right? So you will be getting an update on this. We're going to move you guys into a platform called Circle. In there, that'll be your community platform. I will be creating a lot of courses and content and training, right? Around just different topics like building with Claude Code to building with agents to using agents, things like that. Right. But today is just going to be a bit of a primer. Right. So I put together a bit of an outline here so that I can create the course. I'm just going to use this so I can walk you guys through it. Right. First thing first is the tech stack that you're going to need to create a cohesive and easy workspace to build things in. Right. And we're going to use a use case today. We're actually going to, what is that? Okay. We're going to build a personal brand website. I'm going to have one of you guys volunteer. If any of one of you guys have existing contacts, actually, let's do this. If any of you guys have a Gamma profile, and remember the profile you guys use to get matched, if you're currently in matching right now or have the match already, just pull up one of your Gamma profiles, throw it in the chat there. I'm gonna turn your Gamma profile into our personal brand website. Right. Arnold says, I've been waiting for that course. Great. Amazing. Kendra, course will be amazing. Yeah. I'm getting into course creation mode now. All right. And we're also in the community. We're going to have more like build together days as well. Right. Once you guys know how to build now, I want to, bring you guys together. Let's actually build together. Let's build in public. So we can take one of the projects you guys are working on. Let's work on it together. Let's build it, hive mind it. All right. So while I'm walking through this, if one of you guys want to volunteer your Gamma profiles, just drop that into the chat there. All right. And I'm going to show you guys how you can take that and turn that into a fully deployed personal brand website. Actually lives online. You can share that. Right. Why I'm using that personal brand website as an example, because it's the easiest, quickest thing we can do here. Right. Obviously, this is not useful for your executive. Don't go and do this for your executive. I just want to walk you guys through and show you from end to end how to go from an idea to a fully deployed solution. Okay. I will try to get it all done. I don't know if we'll be able to get it done in 40 minutes here. But we'll do our best here. So in terms of the tech stack, there are a few things you're gonna need. You're gonna need a paid subscription to one of the LLMs, of course, right? So if you have a Claude subscription already, right? So either a pro or a team plan, you're gonna need that in order to be able to access Claude Code, right? For ChatGPT, same thing, right? You're gonna need I forgot what it's called in there, but you do need a paid plan in order to access Codex, right? So that's the first thing. If you don't have that, right? This is something you should be talking to your client about, right? All of you guys should be having a paid subscription so that you have full access to the resources you need to build and create with AI. Second thing here is not required, but just recommended, right? Some sort of voice dictation tool, right? I have it. It makes it easier, right? So I can just chat and with the coder rather than typing things, mainly because I'm a slow typer and I'm very lazy at typing. All right, but not required. You don't need that. What is required is going to be some sort of IDE, right? An IDE is just a simple software. Most of them are free, but it's a software that combines all the essential tools that you're going to need to create a workspace so that you can code and build things. right? I personally use VS Code. You can pick Cursor, you can pick Anti-Gravity. There's a lot out there, right? Most of them come with a free plan. You will typically only need a free plan. You will not need a paid subscription for any of these, right? Unless you want to use their specific built-in agents. But because we're using something like Claude Code, you don't need to use their agents. So just use the free plan of any of these tools here. On the right-hand side here, this is what VS Code looks like, okay? Why an IDE, right? The alternative route is if you have a Claude web app, you could use the Claude Code section in your web app, right? And the problem with this one is you just can't see your files. You can't directly see your terminal, right? It just doesn't bring all the tools together in one cohesive workspace, right? It's not impossible. What you could do is just open up your terminal and pull it up here, and you can have your workspace file in something like Obsidian, right? And then you can do your coding in here, right? But it's just a little cumbersome, and I like to keep things simple and clean and all in one, right? So I use something like an IDE, right? So VS Code allows you to open up. So I can open up any project folder that I have in here, all right, that I want to be working in. I can open up my second brain, all right, and that way Claude Code has access to my second brain now and has access to all the contexts in my second brain, right? Or if I want to create a new folder or create a new project, which I'm going to do today, right? So we'll go tests, personal site. All right, so I'm just going to open this up. So now I have a project workspace in here, right? This might pop up sometimes. This is the native agent in these IDE. I just typically ignore it, just close it. We don't need that, right? What we do is we need Claude Code. All right, and so if you go into your IDE, there will be a section somewhere in here called extensions. You want to add the Claude Code extension. So let's type in, search for Claude Code, all right, install that extension, right? And then now you will have Claude Code inside of your IDE, right? And so I'll come back to the Explorer, which opens up the folder workspace. All right, it's empty right now because this is an empty folder, which is fine. Once I start building things, it's going to come into here, right? So once you have the extension for your Claude Code, then now you can just go into here and type in Claude Code. Oh, pops up here for me, right? Then you open this up in a new window and boom, right? Now, oh, Kendra says we can't see my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Everyone see my screen? Oh, everyone sees my screen. I think it's just you, Kendra. You might have to, I have a wide monitor. I don't know if you need to zoom in or zoom out or something to be able to see. But it looks like it's something on your side. Yeah. Okay, so we have, again, folder workspace, Claude Code extension. So I have access to Claude Code directly in my IDE now. And then the third thing, depending on the project you're working in, sometimes you need access to your terminal, right? And so you go up to the top here and you open up this bottom panel, then your terminal pops up. You guys see what I mean now? All three in one. I have my file workspace, I have Claude Code, and I have my terminal all in one space here. All right, just makes it easy for any project that I'm working on, right? You might not always need your terminal, and that's fine. So I'll just close that for now. And so I have access to Claude Code here. For some of you that are getting started with Claude Code, you may need to install Claude Code onto your computer first, right? This is different from installing the web app. You can install the web app and you can have access to, Chat, Cowork, Code. That is not the same thing as installing Claude Code onto your computer, right? And so if this is your first time, I recommend starting there and installing it. And Claude has created very, very straightforward and easy instructions on how to do that. And I'll link that to here and I can share that with you guys as well. All right, but you just go into here and there's a quick start guide. All right, so before starting, again, make sure you have a subscription. Once you have that, depending on your operating system, you'll have different command lines that you can put into your terminal, right? So I'll come back here. Once you've downloaded VS Code and you have access to this, you can open up your terminal here. Then I use Mac, so I would just copy this into the terminal, and that would install Claude Code onto my computer, right? If you guys don't remember, terminal is just your way of accessing the back end of your computer, right? So you can install different tools into it. Quick question, are you self-hosting Claude Code? No. Nope, not at all, right? So it's, you're installing Claude Code onto your computer. Once you install it into your computer and just follow the instructions that it gives you, right? It'll give you instructions in the terminal here. I'll tell you to install this. Once it's installed, it's going to ask you to log into your Claude subscription. Then you just log into your Claude subscription, right? And then from your computer, you'll have access to Claude Code. It's not self-hosted, right? It's like think of it as a software. You're installing the software called Claude Code into your computer. It just doesn't have a web application, right? It just lives on the back end of your computer there, right? And that's why we use a software like an IDE, like VS Code, and then we add the extension, right? Once it's installed, you open up the extension. The extension will ask you to log in to your subscription as well. You just log in, and then you have access to Claude Code, right? And this is going to look like this. Cool. Yeah, no one shared a Gavin profile yet. No one wants to share their profile. While we wait for that.
Sandoni shared her profile. You have it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. I see it. Okay, thank you. Amazing. All right, we'll use yours. Okay. The next step here, and I'll go through in more detail all the different things that you'll need to do, right? But I'm gonna skip those for now. You'll get those details in the course. What I do want to come to speak into is the framework. I want to give you guys a simple and clear framework that you can use for any of your projects, whether you're building an automation, whether you're building a micro app, whether you're building a website, whether you're building an agent, right? I use this framework, right? And there's lots of other frameworks out there. But again, you're welcome to use mine. You're welcome to use other people's. It'll all come back to pretty much the same kind of flow here, right? Which is a 5-phase step, all right, to building anything with Claude Code, right? First step is to brainstorm. You always want to brainstorm and gather and bring together all the context needed before you begin any type of building. Never ever go out there to start building things right away, right? Julie had to say is, wouldn't they need to install Git first? Yes, that is. In the course, I'm going to dive into, there's some prerequisite packages you're going to need that are very common across any type of builds, right? Those things are going to be, Node, npm, pnpm, right? Git, Next.js. This is the framework used for most apps out there, right? So these will be like starting frameworks, packages you'll need to install beforehand. You technically won't need to. You could just get into the whole brainstorming and planning. Part of the planning phase, Claude Code will know. It'll just be like, you're going to need these packages beforehand, and then it's going to prompt you to install it before it can begin building anything. All right. So it's fine if you skip this step at this point right now, right? And then if you wanted to do it beforehand, just to get it out of the way, because it is a one-time install, right? And then every once in a while, you might need to update it, but Claude will know when you need to update certain packages, right? You could just use this prompt, right? So I would just like copy this right into my Claude, right? And I would just tell it, hey, check my system. Tell me if any of these tools are missing, right? If they're missing, let's install it, right? If it's not missing, great. Tell me what version it's on. If it needs to be updated, let's update it. All right, so just some prerequisites just to make sure some of these packages are there, and you don't need to know what each of these packages are. If you are curious and interested, you can ask Claude. All right, but just know that these are just very common development packages that's required for most common app builds. All right. You will need access to Git as well, right? Because Git allows you to do version control, right? So that you have version control for your app. I'm not going to dive into that today. That's, another topic. We can dive into that when we get into, more of the execution and testing phases. Today, I want to spend more time in how do we get from just brainstorm all the way through to execution, right? So brainstorm, get your idea out, right? If you have an idea of something you want to build, you know that this is going to create more impact, more value for your executive. Start brainstorming that, all right? And there's two ways to do it. One, you can do it directly in Claude Code, or two, you can open up your Cowork or your chat and you can do the brainstorming in there, right? And you give it the context that you need to give it, and I'll show you what that looks like. We have the context, right? We have the gamma profile. We're going to take the gamma profile. We're going to use that as context right now, right? And we're going to explain what we want to do. We want to take this gamma profile. We want to turn it into a personal brand website, right? That, you know, Sanduni can use to share, right? With anyone if she's ever, you know, on the market to, you know, find a new job or something, right? So that is the first step there. It's going to be brainstorming. So again, I'll repeat, one way is do it here in chat and Cowork, give it the context you need, and you can talk through it, right? I'm going to give you guys some frameworks or some questions you can use, right? You want to talk through what's the problem I'm trying to solve for you, right? Who's actually going to be using this app, right? What are the different core features of it, right? What are, you know, the design, the field that I want here? What's the scope that's within V1, right? I don't want to build like a full on software. I just want to look at what's the first scope here that I want to build for the MVP, all right? So things like that. The brainstorming phase is where you want to be spending most of your time, right? I typically spend the most amount of time with any type of builds, whether it's a app, agent, automation. I spend most of it in brainstorming and planning. Why? Because once the brainstorming and the planning is clear, the execution becomes easy. If the brainstorming and the planning is not clear and not thoroughly thought out, and you go straight into executing, what ends up happening is it builds something, you don't like it, you keep asking it to keep fixing things or reworking things or redoing things, and you spend way more tokens than you need, right? If you want to be able to optimize for the token usage, right, then you want to spend more time in the brainstorming and come to a very clear plan. So brainstorm, Claude Chat, Claude Cowork, ChatGPT, wherever, right? Once the brainstorming is clear, then you want to bring that into your coding tool. How you do that is you brainstorm and then you get Claude, Chat, whatever, right, to create something called a PRD, which is a products requirements document, right? Think of it as a brief, right? So in this case, because we're building a personal brand website, it's essentially a creative brief, right? The same way with any creative projects, before you dive into building, you create the brief first. You take the brief, you create it into a project plan, and then you go and you execute it. It's the same with product, right? You want to create the brief first, which is the PRD. Then you want to create a clear project plan with these are the phases, these are the tasks, and then you go and you execute step by step, task by task, phase by phase, sequentially, right? The clearer the PRD and the project plan, the easier execution will be, right? And so that's the second phase here. It's taking all your brainstorming, right? If you're doing that in Cowork or chat, then you just ask it, great, now that we have all the context, can you turn this into a simple PRD that I can give the Claude Code to execute on, right? Then it's going to give you a PRD, ideally in a markdown file. Then you bring that into the project, right? You bring your PRD into here, right? Then you give that to Claude Code and you go, great, review the PRD, and then create a very clear step-by-step, phase-by-phase implementation plan. Put that into a plan.md, right? Then you're going to have two files. You're going to have the PRD, which is the brief, and then you're going to have the plan.md, which is the step-by-step implementation plan. Then you can get into implementation, right? There's another way to kind of shortcut all this and make it a lot easier, right? Is Claude Code has plugins. Right, and so I'm going to give you guys a quick overview of how to use Claude Code. If you guys use Claude already, you're familiar with a lot of the features, right? But there's a couple things that are very unique to Claude Code, right? The slash command is how you open up the menu, right? If you need to switch models, you can just go to switch model. You can switch between Opus, Sonnet, right? Haiku, which I don't think I ever use, right? But I mostly switch between Opus and Sonnet. I typically I use Opus because I have the max plan, but for you guys, if you guys are on a pro plan and you want to optimize for token usage, I would use Sonnet for the brainstorm and the plan phase, and then only use Opus when you're actually executing and building, right? Then you'll optimize for your token usage a little bit better there. All right. So that's the first one. The second thing is switching the modes, right? So Claude Code will have a few different modes. It'll give you 3 modes by default, right? The first mode is ask before edits, right? So if you're asking it to execute, it's gonna execute, but it's gonna ask you before it does things, right? So you'll have way more control over what Claude is doing or Code is doing, right? This is the safest route. If you're new to it, I recommend starting there, right? And making sure you guys have full control over each step of the way so that Claude Code isn't doing something that you don't want it to be doing. If you're more familiar, you're getting more familiar with Claude Code, you can switch to edit automatically, where it'll start to edit files more automatically, but it will just ask you permission for certain things like things that it needs to install and this and that, right? That requires more of your decision there, right? So it gives it a little bit more autonomy, right? Third mode is plan mode. You want to use this for if you don't want Claude Code to write any code or to edit or change anything, you just want to brainstorm with it, right? So if you're in the brainstorming phase, you can use plan mode, and then you can just brainstorm with Claude Code. It won't write anything, it won't change anything until you tell it to do it specifically. There's a fourth mode. I'm not going to dive into this one. I use this most of the time, but that's also because I'm very familiar with Claude Code already, and I'm used to building these projects already, so I know what it's going to do, right? Which is it's called dangerous mode, and you just have it bypass all permissions, and you give it full autonomy to be able to go and build and do things, right? I do it because I already know what Claude's going to do in a lot of these projects that I have, so I could give it more autonomy. I don't recommend you guys get there until you start to build multiple projects already and you start to familiarize yourself with Claude. Okay. And so you can change the modes by just clicking here and changing it, or you can go Shift Tab and that just changes the modes. Right. Plugins. This is where I recommend if you're starting out. There's a couple plugins that I would recommend. All right, so you just go type /plugins and go to manage plugins, and Anthropic, right, will have their own a lot of plugins already, and I recommend starting there, right, because it's Anthropic's plugins, so it's already validated and proven that it is safe, right? You can also install external plugins, but unless you know what you're doing, I don't recommend you do that yet, right? It just creates a lot of security risk if you don't know what you're feeding into your Claude Code, right? So I recommend just going with any of the Anthropic ones. I have a lot here. There are a couple that I recommend that you guys start with. First one is going to be the skill creator one. So skill-creator, all right? And that one just allows Claude to have the skills to create skills, which is going to be a lot of your guys' workflows, right? Your workflows as EAs is to look at what can I automate, right? What skill can I create in order to automate certain things? Well, there's the skill creator skill, right? Has all of Anthropic's best practices built in there already, right? The second one is called Superpowers. I recommend installing this one, right? What Superpowers does is it takes you exactly through this flow that we have here, right? It has the skills for brainstorming. It has the skills for creating the planning files. It has the skills for executing. It has the skills for testing, right? And so that's a really good way to get started with Claude Code, so that you don't have to create all the instructions for Claude Code, right? And so once you install that, that gives you the skills and the commands. You just go /brainstorming, right? So you can use either or; they're both the same thing. All right, they're both superpower, from the superpower plugin, right? And so it'll do exactly what I've outlined here, right? So you just go brainstorming and then talk to it, right? Brain dump. Here's my idea. Here's what I want. Here's what I'm thinking, right? And then it's just going to ask you more clarifying questions to gather the context, and then when you have the context, then you switch over to. This is why I use dictation, guys. I'm terrible at typing. Writing. So /writing plans is the second phase, right? It'll take the brainstorm, right, and it'll create a PRD and an implementation plan for you, right? And then executing plans is the third phase, where it'll actually execute on the project. Okay, so those are the plugins I recommend. There's a lot of other ones which I'll dive into in the future in future sessions and future courses here. But for today, let's go in and let's test this. Let's start to test this. So we have the camera profile. Let me just open that up. While I'm doing this, any questions you guys have so far? Is the gamma profile loading for you guys? Because it doesn't seem like it's loading for me. Oh, there you go. Sure, that was the case. But okay, we have a solid gamma profile here with the video and everything. Amazing. Okay. So, I'll take a step back. So if we're looking at building a personal brand website, right, of course, we're going to need to brainstorm and come up with the context, right? What do we want on the personal brand website? Some basic branding, guidelines for it, right? Things like that. If you have existing context already, which in this case, Sanduni has, she has the gamma profile that she used here at Atlas. So we can just take this and we can give this to Claude. And I'm going to assume Claude will be able to view this and hopefully it doesn't have any issues. All right, so let's use the superpower one as the example. So I'm going to go brainstorming. I am just going to use voice dictation. So I want to create a personal brand website for Zanduni, one of our EAs. I have existing contacts on her. We have a Gamma app profile, which includes who she is, her background, her skill sets, and her experience. All right, I want to take all of this and turn this into a simple, modern, beautiful personal brand website. Cool. So as you can see here, because Claude has the superpower brainstorming skills, it knows what it needs to do, right? So it's going to go through, it's going to gather the context there. Return for error, may need authentication. I might have to do screenshots. Sometimes Claude Code can't access every website, right? And I think this will be the case more and more. Some people have protections on their websites, and for security reasons, they don't allow AI agents or AI agents to be able to easily access it. So let's see here. It is looking my second brain now, which it will not find anything on Sanduni there. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna pause it. Use the playwright. See if that works. Context, so you guys know what it is. This is another plugin. It's called Playwright. What it does is it allows, as you can see, it allows Claude Code to open up a browser and view the website and take screenshots of the website. Right? Just because sometimes some URLs and some websites blocks AI agents from accessing it. So that's another pretty good plugin that I would recommend you guys start there too. Okay, so now it's going to go and it's going to be a brainstorming partner for me, right? It's going to ask you questions, just follow along with it, right? So since we're designing a personal brand website, some of it, I did show you mockups, features still new. Do you have the time for it? I would recommend going through the full process, but I'm just going to skip the mockups for now because I want to show you guys just a little bit more of the end-to-end, going from an idea all the way to, we'll see if we can get the website live. What is the primary purpose? Sandiri, what is your primary purpose here?
I'd like them to know me better.
All right, so it's brainstorming and starting to architect out the different sections of the site. So a hero and about me, skills, experience, case study, highlight, testimonial, all looks good, right? Let's go single page. What's the vibe? What vibe do you want here? Clean, minimal, bold, modern? Warm, approachable, corporate, polished.
Approachable.
Approachable. Okay. Tech stack. So when it starts to ask you guys questions and you're like, you have no idea. It's like, I don't know what Nest.js is. I don't know what Tailwind CSS is. I don't know what Vercel is. You can ask it questions. Right? You can just ask it, what do each of these mean? Right? I know what it is, so I'm just gonna tell it, right? So just simple HTML. Do you have a headshot? Can we just not sure if we'll be able to pull it. What is this? Where'd it go? Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I figured. No. Okay. All right. So as it's building, as it's planning, right, it's going to start, adding in, files and coding files into your workspace, right? And so best practices, keep every project in its own folder so that you can just, if I want to switch to a new project, I want to work on a separate project at the same time here, I can open a completely separate window of VS Code and it just open up a different project, right? So I can go in here. Let's say I want to go into my second brain. I can open that up, right? And then I have an existing Claude Code in here, but I would just do the exact same thing. Then I have multiple projects running at the same time, and I can work on different Claude Code instances on different projects at the same time, right? Cool. See where that got the download. LinkedIn, email, she wants listed. Do you have your LinkedIn on here? Let's put a placeholder. The links. Cool. So it asks all the clarifying question. It has the context now. What it's going to do is it's going to propose 2 to 3 different approaches, and then you can pick which approach you want. All right. So linear storytelling, card-based dashboard, minimal, column. You have a preference? It recommends A. I'm not with A for now.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes. A. Nice.
So it's taking me through each section by section and explaining what it's thinking. And this is where, again, this is the brainstorming. You can go back and forth, right? I'm going to just fly through this just to get through it. All right. But this is where you would, like having a conversation with an actual coder. You would just have a conversation. No, actually, I want this or I want that, right? This is lazy coding for now. I'm just going yes to everything. But you guys can see the thoroughness of this plugin, the superpower plugin, right? You can achieve a similar experience. If you did it with, Claude Cowork, right? It probably won't be as thorough though. What it'll do is it'll just take your brainstorm and then it's going to spit out a PRD right away, right? And then you can review the PRD and then you can go back and forth on it. Whereas why I like Superpower, because it does this, right? It goes through, it really thinks through each component, each section, it talks through it with you, creates space for you to really brainstorm and go back and forth on everything. All right, so now you can see it's going to write the design doc, right, which is basically the PRD. Sometimes it uses different terminology for certain things, but the fundamental concept behind it all is similar, right? Sometimes it's a design doc, sometimes it's a spec doc, sometimes it's whatever. It'll know what it needs to do because it has the context on what you're trying to build. So it's building that out now. It's building a design.md, which probably goes, talks about the, tech stack, visual designs, structure, spec written. All right, so this is the PRD. It's not called a PRD, but essentially it does the PRD, right? You can review it, see if it makes sense. If it's all good, then the next step is you want to take your PRD. In some cases, you may want a visual mock-up of it, right? This is if you're building an app. What I recommend is don't jump straight into executing and building the app right away. You want a just simple visual mock-up of it, right? So an interactive mock-up, so you can actually play around with it. It'll have mock data, and that's totally fine because you want to validate and make sure that it is aligned with what you want to be building first. All right, if it's aligned, great, you can move forward. If it's not, you can go back and forth, right? Because sometimes even though the PRD sounds good on paper, you want to actually see that visual mock-up, right? And then go back and forth. And then the next step is you want an implementation plan, right? So you guys remember the analogy, create a brief or a project brief, and then a project plan. All right, and you guys probably have seen this. If you go straight from a brief to execution and you're not sure what what the tasks are, who does what, right, then we can't really hold the team accountable. All right, and then execution becomes fragmented and all over the place. It's going to be the same when it comes to development. All right, so the two key files you want to get to before you execute anything is first the PRD and then the implementation plan. All right, so Superpowers is already jumping ahead here, and it's like, okay, do we want to build an implementation plan? Yes. And let's create the implementation plan. All right, and what it's going to do now is it's going to use its other skill, the write plan skill, and it's going to write a plan. All right, and what that means is it breaks down everything into steps, into tasks. So it goes task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. If it's a big project, I'll break it up into phase 1, task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, phase 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, task 3, and so on. All right. Michael says, are you going to be sharing your process? Yes. Yes. I mean, it's long and it's all over the place. Let me create a more simplified version of it because this is the course outline. All right. I mean, I can give it to you guys. I have no problem with giving it to you. All right. I think it's a very long document, as you can see, and I don't think it's fun to read through this all. Right. But I can share it and you can just give it to your AI as well and tell your AI to tell you what's the next step. So that can work too. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So I do break it down in each step. Phase 1, what to do, right? Phase 2, planning, what to do, the full workflow, all of it. Some prompts in there. I give you guys some prompts so you guys can use the prompts or take the prompts and just remodel it so it works for you. Right. But the goal here is I want to turn this into a course. And I have the outline already. It's just a matter of shooting the videos. So we should have this for you guys pretty soon here. I'd say in the next couple weeks. Let's see. Okay, it's taking some time here, but it's going to break that down into a plan. We're running out of time. I was hoping we could actually get to the full-on website today. I see another question. I'm just reviewing instructions my client sent me for setting up a project in Claude Teams account. The output you're showing in today's session looks similar to what I got when I did this with my client, although ours was a bit simpler. Yeah. Involved uploading an MD file, 3 skills. How a team can run a repeatable process. It is similar. So there's a lot of I'm seeing, you know, a lot of the fundamental principles behind it all, right? It's making sure that you have the right context, making sure that you have a very clear workflow, right? And so yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it is similar. The only difference is I just don't know what outcomes you guys are creating or what you're doing in your setup, right? In the Teams account, if you're just using like Claude Code and Claude Cowork, there will be limitations to what you can build, right? So if you're just creating files, let's just say you're all right, we want to build a course curriculum, right? Or we're creating, you know, more documentations, we're outlining SOPs and stuff like that, then, you know, Chat and Cowork can do most of it, right? Cowork does have more capabilities, right? By connecting different tools, right? You can add in different connectors, different tools, which allows you to do more work, right? So if it's work that you're trying to get done, great. Yeah, I think, you know, what you guys are doing is essentially this the Cowork setup, right? Today what I'm diving into is how do you actually go from an idea for an actual app or an actual automation or an actual tool that you want to build, right? And going from that idea to actually building it, right? And at this point in time, I do believe that you will need Claude Code for that. All right, there's limitations to what Claude Cowork can build and do. Okay, so it is completed. So I created a plan, and you can see here in the folder here, now you have a PRD and you have a plan.md. It didn't use the same naming convention that I'm sharing in here. You can update that if you want, or you just know that, you know, the spec is the PRD and the plan is the plan.md. Once you have that now, you can dive into execution. All right. And so because I'm using the superpower plugin, it already knows what the next step is. And so it's already recommending that, okay, there's two execution options. One is it can spin a bunch of sub agents and do it, or two is it goes one by one, step by step. All right. To speed things up, I'm going to go sub agent route. Let's do this. All right. Let's see how quickly you can get there in the next 3 minutes here. Some best practices when it comes to execution, right? I'm kind of cheating and I'm just jumping straight into it. What I recommend, right, when you have your, let me just pull out the project plan here. All right. And so you can see the project plan. Let's open a nicer view of it with a nicer view here. You'll see what it did here for the implementation plan. It'll go through what the file structure is going to be. It's scaffold, you know, the project, right? You don't need to understand any of this. You just need to know that it wrote a plan for itself to execute. And you see that it broke it down to tasks. So task 2, task 3, task 4. So it's a full-on project plan now. When you're executing, what I recommend is tackling it one step at a time. Don't do what I'm doing. I just go do it all. All right. And just to speed things up here, I recommend going through one by one so you can see what Claude is doing, right? And you can learn from that, right? There's a lot that you can learn from just observing and seeing what is Claude doing here? How is it doing this, right? And the other the other advantage to doing that is you have much more control over context, right? Remember that there's a context window. You use it all up, Claude's going to automatically compact. And if it compacts, it loses some of the previous context, right? And if it loses some of the previous context and you continue to the next task, it may not be as effective with doing the next task. So what I typically recommend, what I do is if I have a bigger project, is I'll use one instance. I'll do task 1. When task 1 is complete, right, I'll tell it to update the project plan. And then I'll open up another tab and I'll go, okay, execute, right? Execute plans, and I'll direct it to execute. I'll go at that plan, right? So the plan.md, and I'll go task 2, right? So now it's going to know, it's going to review the project plan, and it's going to work on task 2. Task 2 is done. Again, I will open up a new one, and I'll do task 3. Then that way, each time you open up a new Claude Code instance, it has its full context window, right? Then every time you start, just have it pull back in the context, right? If you want, you can pull in both files. Just be like, review the PRD again, review the project plan, continue with task 3. And then same thing. Once I'm done with that, open a new one, pull both those in, continue with task 4, right? So right now it is, wow, it moved through pretty quickly. So I finished all of these sections already. If you guys have to hop, you guys are welcome to hop. I'm going to stick around a little bit longer here and see where we get to. Or I'll just post it in the community. I'll post it in your guys' community once that's up so you guys can see what the final outcome of that looks like. And then in the next call, we'll dive into the next phases, which is, how to a little bit more on how to execute, effectively, how to actually test, right? And then how to ship it, how to deploy it, right? Because what it's building here is going to live locally. How do I take this, put this into a GitHub repo and publish it online so that it becomes an actual live website, right? And so we'll dive more into that. All right. And if you're doing any design stuff, I'll talk a little bit more about some more best practices for design as well. All right. Because what tends to happen is these AI models, when you ask it to design things, it designs the website is going to look like everyone else's website. It's not going to look unique. Right. If you are noticing that, what I recommend, there's a cool plugin called Front End Design. If you install that and add that, what that does is it instructs Claude to think outside the box a little bit and not create AI slop when it comes to design, right? And that's been a really good tool that I've been using. Cool. So we'll wrap up here. I'll share the final output because as you can see, it's still working on things, right? Of where it landed, and then we'll continue this session next time. Michael says, how's the max plan usage in Claude Code? Does it eat up really fast? I'm planning to use, I use the max plan. Very, very rarely do I actually hit my limit. All right. I'm on the max plan though. So I have a lot of token usage. Right. On the standard max plan, it just comes down to what you're building. If you're actually building apps and building, apps, you will hit your limit for sure. All right, smaller projects, max planable. Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah. Cool. Hopefully that was helpful. I know it may be a little overwhelming for some of you guys because it's very technical. I just wanted to show you guys, high level there. In the course, we'll go, at a slower pace, deep into each section by section, right? The goal here is to get all of you guys to be able to do everything I just did today and all the way to the end, finish line as well, right? And that is the goal for you guys. Because that allows you guys to take one step further towards being AI operators. All right. Amazing. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you guys in the next session.